this is more on the psychological side. But a limiting belief might sound like, look, I've heard about these things, I know everyone in the industry is using this piece of software or this kind of technology, I just don't think it would work for us. That isn't an objection, that's a limiting belief. That's something that someone believes that you can coach them through, and what they're really saying is, I don't like change, which is a very, very understandable human feeling, not liking change. The third closely ties in is bias. So people can have bias where they can have seen something not work before and then assume everything thereafter won't work either. That's an example of a bias. It could be that when you pitch something or when you give the problems that you solve, the prospect uses something called confirmation bias, which is where they search for things, typically negative things, that fit their own narrative. So again, that's bias, that's not an objection. And there's also stalling. So stalling is where I would use something as a defense mechanism to stop you, the salesperson, getting me to make a decision against my own will. Often happens when there's a little bit of reactance kicking in. I feel like you're persuading me too hard. I'm going to stall for a bit of time. Okay? So there's lots and lots of different things that can show up. Not all of them are going to be objections, and that's an important distinction. And we can talk about how we can deal with those, but that's an important distinction. Now, disclaimer before I move into how to actually deal with the objections. Number one, an objection is the sign that you've done something wrong. There's no such thing as bad prospects. So if you're getting the same objection over and over again, if you're hearing send me an email lots and lots of times, but you're speaking to lots and lots of different people, the only thing that's remained the same there is you. So it's a problem with your process and with you. The best thing salespeople can do is hold up the mirror and look at their own reflection and say, what is wrong with me? That's disclaimer number one. Disclaimer number two, and this is an interesting one. So objections, contrary to popular belief, are not best dealt with by the salesperson, because you cannot persuade anyone of anything. You can only make them think. Objections should always be dealt with by the prospect. Now, one of the things I talked about before was, is there a framework that you should use when you're exploring objections? And there absolutely is. It's not rigid, but it's a set of rules, it's a framework that may work as you're moving through an objection. It's not a silver bullet, it won't work every time, but it'll certainly help you get to a hard yes or a hard no. And that's really the job that we've got here. We don't want any maybes, think about it, or anything that says, I think, when you're considering the call after the fact. So, the first thing to do is to welcome the objection, acknowledge and agree. When we're children, when we've got problems, when we let people know the reasons we don't want to do things, the best parenting advice that you can give someone is to acknowledge the way your child feels.